Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to be going over my process for ripping assets from Unity games. As an example in this I will be using the game AltspaceVR. It is a virtual reality social game, and basically you can make your own apps for it, and I've had a lot of developers ask me how they can get the models from the game as reference so that they can put their own stuff on characters or put their own stuff in the levels. It's just very helpful to have reference geometry there. Obviously, when you rip models from a game, it is not your property. You aren't allowed to distribute those files. You can't claim that you own them. You can't sell them. You shouldn't distribute them. It's not your intellectual property rights. So, use tact. Only use the stuff for reference. Don't put anything out there that you don't own. So, with that out of the way, we'll be going over two different programs here. One of them is called Unity Studio, which I've opened right now. Sorry, let me kill the music there. And the other is called Unity Asset Bundle Extractor. Unity Studio is actually, as of recently, very, very good, so we might not even need to go over Unity Asset Bundle Extractor. But I have in the past had some issues with Unity Studio where I had to resort to the other tool. The other tool isn't as full-featured, but it lets you get some files that sometimes you just can't grab any other way. So the first program, Unity Studio, the original developer, Radu MC, kind of stopped working on it. They just sort of disappeared from the project, but thankfully it is open source, so other people have been able to build on top of their work, namely Perfare. We're going to be using whoever that person's version is of this program. That was a weird sentence. Anyway, we're going to be using Perfare's fork of Unity Studio. And we're going to use that one because it is updated to the newest version of Unity. It's updated to 5.6.0 F3, which I believe is the newest version right now. And I know that came with some big changes to how they worked with their files, so this is the version you're going to need. The other tool, just to mention it, even if we don't wind up needing it, it is called Unity Asset Bundle Extractor, and that is by Derpopo. And you're going to want to download version 2.1 64-bit from one of these links, and then you actually can skip all of these bug fixes except for the last one, and you can just download the 64-bit version of that. Actually, this includes the files for both 32 and 64-bit. It'll have a file in there. You copy over the zip, the extracted files of the 2.1 download. And if you happen to be working with the newest version of Unity, you'll have to download this thing. I'll get into that when we get there. Excuse me. So first off, Unity Studio. So when you're on this project page from the video description link, you'll just click on releases here and go ahead and download the x64 zip if you're on a 64-bit machine. If not, you'll just get the 32-bit one, which is that unlabeled one. So we go ahead and get that. You extract it. I've already done that, so I'm going to cancel if I can before it's done. Yeah, okay. And we're going to go under my Unity Rips folder, which is where I have extracted both of these programs. And you can see we have Unity Studio x64 version 0.7.0. Cool. Alright, so we're going to go in here, double click on unitystudio.exe. You'll get this program popping up. And it's pretty useful. So what do? You got a game you want to rip files from. Where do you find them? Well, if it's a Steam game, you are going to look under your Steam library, of course, first. Mine happens to be under D Steam. Usually it's under C Program Files x86 Steam, and that's where you would find it. For me, though, that is not the case. Then once you're in your Steam folder, you'll go to Steam Apps, Common, that is not common, Common, and AltspaceVR, in this case, is the game we're going to be using. A lot of other games use Unity. If you see under the game the folder structure that has like the name of the game _ data, you're probably working with a Unity game. And if you go under that and there's like .assets files, then it's definitely a Unity game. Now there's a bunch of different files in here that end with .assets. Typically the one you're going to want to look in are the bigger files. They'll usually have shared assets or resources.assets. This global game manager stuff you can usually ignore. That's stuff that Unity uses to show the splash screen in the beginning, like the stuff that you very first need when you launch a game. But the actual content of the game will usually be in stuff named like this. And if it's a really big game, you might have shared assets 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. All split into separate files. So anyway, we're going to choose the shared asset 0.assets file. It's the biggest file in there, so it's a good hint that it's probably the file with all the content in it. And Unity Studio will load up a few different files here. These are sort of the dependent files, you could say. They're basically what shared asset 0 told Unity that it also depended on. So things like your core audio sample type and definitions for texture types and things like that, stuff that the core engine needs. So it pulls those in as well, but we can completely ignore them. So first off, you typically will have some idea what you're wanting to rip. Like say I was looking at the new Rick and Morty game, you'd say I wanted the character models, I would type in Morty and just see what comes up. The search function only works under the asset list. It's a little confusing. Basically anything you see over here is a 3D asset. Maybe something as simple as just a 3D position, or it might actually be a 3D model, or a reference to the position of a light, or all sorts of stuff like that. Basically anything that exists in the 3D scene will show up under here. Anything that the stuff in the scene depends on, so like the textures that are on that 3D model, or the audio sample that a 3D positional audio is using, things like that will show up under the asset list. So to get a good idea of what we're searching for here, I'm going to try and rip the character models from AltspaceVR, so like the robots and stuff that you can walk around as. I happen to already know from doing this that they use the term pod for most of those characters, so I can just type in pod under asset list and I can get a good idea of what the different names are here. So pod S series 01, it pulled up all the texture files for stuff basically, because like I said, that's the assets. The model won't show up under assets. But we get the idea that the pod S series 01 looks like it's the female robot, and then pod S series 02 is the male robot. We'll start with the female one because it's 01, and you can see they've got the 01 diffuse and 01 glow. And so pod S series 01, that's what we're going to look for on the left side here to rip everything at once. You can go through and rip the textures separately and audio files separately, but if you get a 3D model that has all that stuff as part of the model, it'll actually rip all that stuff with the 3D model when you rip it. So we're just going to go ahead and try and find pod S series 01 in the left side here. Typically if there's a plus sign next to it, that's a good indicator that it's like an actual 3D model, because it's got stuff that's under it, like textures and other stuff. So there's pod S series 02, so that would be the male model. And there's pod S series 01. So I'm just going to put a check mark next to that. If we look under it, you can see it's actually got base, body, and then we actually have the 3D hierarchy of the bones in the character. So this is actually the rig. So we'll actually be getting some joints and stuff when we rip this model, which is cool. Most of the time you will. Sometimes you'll just get locators where each of the joints were, depending on how animation was done on their game. But usually you'll actually get the bones with it, which is great. And the model will be rigged to it. It's not just gonna come in with the bones but not rigged. So you can actually rip a fully rigged character with this, which is great. Alright, so we're just going to choose the model, and we're going to do export selected 3D objects. Cool. By default it'll throw you back in the folder you were in, but I'm going to go to the folder that I made for all this stuff, so Unity rips, and I'll just choose that folder. And I'm going to name this pod S series 01. And there we go. So it just ripped it. It was that quick. And now we have a 3D model that we can use. So if you go under the rips folder, you can see it's created a texture 2D folder. It went ahead and grabbed all the textures that make up this model, which are the glow texture. This is what it uses on the areas that glow. Just multiplies a color value on top of them. That's our base texture. Multiplies whatever color you chose on top of that as well. And then this one, I believe, is what they use to do the glowing on the character whenever you're doing, whenever you're being front row mirrored to another room. They get kind of that like ghostly glow to it. Ghost contour 2 material, some sort of matte cap material texture there. But yeah, so there you go, you've got an FBX. Now the problem with this FBX is it is a ASCII FBX file, typically. I'm not sure if this depends on what the file was like when they were working in Unity, or if this is a file that's being rebuilt from Unity's files in a specific format every time. So like if the game was built on an older version of the FBX format, I don't know if this would also be an older file format here. The reason I'm mentioning all this is Blender doesn't like ASCII FBX files, and they don't like any FBX file from the newest version of the FBX format. They only like FBX version 2014 and 15, and they only like the binary one. So if you're using Blender, this one probably won't work. Let's just give it a test real quick though. Maybe this newest version of Unity Studio might have fixed or changed the behavior anyway. It's not actually a bug with the exporter though, it's more of a problem with Unity. They don't have the most up-to-date FBX standard. Anyway, so we're going to do import FBX in Blender. I'm just going to navigate to what we exported. There it is, and let's just see if it opens. It did not open at all. Fun. Let me do it again just so I can actually take a look at that error. Okay. ASCII FBX files are not supported. So that is an ASCII file. It might also be too new of a file, but it doesn't tell us that there. Autodesk does make an FBX converter that you can try and use. If you're using that, you're going to want to, let me just show that to you guys real quick. Autodesk FBX Converter, and that is plugin and converter archives. They only have an old version of the converter too, which is kind of annoying. 2013, so any files that outputs are going to be the older format, which is fine as long as that's what you're going after. But you can't use it to say convert a newest format ASCII file into a newest format binary, because it can't do the newest format. As to why they haven't updated this, I have no idea. Anyway, so we're going to install that real quick. Actually, I probably already have it. But real quick, just while that's going on, let me open Maya, just show you what you get from these FBX files. Because it is a fully functioning FBX file as they would have imported directly into their Unity project. Explorer shell extension, no thank you. Alright, so I'm just going to drag this pod S-Series 01.fbx into this window. And it'll give me an error about not having a bind pose. That's just a common thing, basically. You can ignore that, it doesn't matter. Maya just likes to store like some extra data on the bones to tell it this is the pose it was in when I first bound the skin to it, but that is not stored in the FBX, so it'll complain about that briefly. But yeah, you can see we get a fully functioning rig with all the bindings intact. We can pose each of the fingers if we wanted to. Everything just works, so that's pretty cool. Excuse me. Now, what is weird about Altspace, and I'm assuming it's something to do with how they're doing their head-mounted display tracking and trying to keep update speeds good on that, and maybe fixing jitter on the character relative to your view or something. Basically, what's weird is the root of their character is the eyes. Typically, on a character, your hips would be the root, so that can be a bit of a problem when you're trying to take this character and do things with it. And all of the Altspace characters are like this, so it's obviously intentional. I'm sure for a good reason, but it's just something that was unexpected for me. So what you can do is you can go and unparent each of these bones. I'm sorry I'm doing this all in Maya, which I'm sure most people don't have, but it's just what I know. The procedure, the stuff you need to do is going to be the same no matter what program you're using, but how you do it's going to be different. So we're going to grab this, and basically I'm just going to reparent everything backwards from how it was, because it was what would typically be considered backwards already. So we're going to try and reverse this back to having everything parented to the hips. Now, doing it this way doesn't lose any of your binding, so your character is still rigged when you do this. So we're just reparenting all this stuff. In Blender, you'd probably do this just by dragging certain bones under other bones, just reordering the way that they are in the list. And there we go. So now those bones are hooked up the way they should be. Now, the way they rig these characters, the whole torso is on this bone, which, not the best rig, but considering what their characters are supposed to do, which is just slide around, they don't bend or flex or anything, it's the perfect solution for these particular characters. Now, they do have some characters that are set up specifically for perception neuron, and they do have some actual binding going on. But yeah, this is exactly how it is in their project. So cool. And I'm going to go ahead and also parent that down to the root bone as it normally would be. And there's a fully workable rig from Altspace. And what's cool is if you hit 6 to go to textured mode, you can see it came in with all the textures and everything. Set lighting to flat lighting, we can see how stuff actually looks in Altspace, because they don't do any dynamic lighting on the characters. And yeah, there you go. So that's your that's how you rip a character. So what I'll typically do is I'll just re-export the FBX from Maya as the older version. I guess I really should have shown how to do that before I closed Maya. Let me do that real quick, because I'm sure some people will need these files in a Blender compatible format, and what you get out of Unity Studio is not that. So I'll quickly open that up real quick and show you guys how to do that. I'm not going to reparent the bones or anything like that. Just get the file in and get it back out to Blender real quick. Okay, so we got that. Of note, they do have sort of this root, or this base transform thing, and as far as I can tell, this is to convert from probably American imperial sizes to metric, because it's 2.54, so yeah, 2.54 inches in a centimeter, or 2.54 centimeters in an inch, whatever. It's some sort of conversion factor here. What I found is if I set that to 1, stuff kind of screws up, so there's some hierarchy issues there. I'm not going to go over how to fix that because it's kind of a pain in the butt, but suffice to say, we don't want to grab this base when we export. We just want to grab, we don't want to grab this pod S-Series 01 node when we export. We just want to grab base and reference. And I'm going to export selection as an FBX. And now where you change the version and the binary or ASCII stuff, that's down here, FBX file format, which I believe is under advanced. And you've got to switch it to binary FBX 2014-15. That's the version that, as far as I know, it's the newest version that Blender can actually do. I've tried to do binary of the newest version and it still kicks it out. It says it's not a valid FBX file. So this should be a Blender compatible version of the file. So let's go under Unity rips. Already got that, and I'm just going to do like _Blender. And I'll quickly show that that does import to Blender now. So import FBX Blender version import. And it's there. It's tiny, but it's there. And I'm not up to date on my Blender stuff. Honestly, I don't really know Blender all that well, but I believe if I do that, yeah, there you go. So the rig still works. It came in just fine. It's tiny though, so you might have to do the 2.54 scale back on it or something like that. But there you go. There's your model. So I believe if you leave stuff as it is, like if I were to just export the geometry here as a OBJ file and bring it into the game, it should be 1-to-1 scale. So basically, you typically, if you're going to animate this, you'd want to get rid of that 2.54 scale without actually changing the size of this. So you kind of want to like freeze transforms, which is hard to do on a rig. That's a topic for another day. But this is at proper scale as it is right now. So this imported into the game should match 1-to-1 with what you see in the world. So if you import that character into your world, they'll be staring right at their eyes. Alright, so that's Unity Studio now. So that's characters. Levels are a bit harder because with Altspace, the way they do their levels is you're browsing around on the menus, you click on an event, and what's happening in the background, you click on that button on the website, because all those menus in the game are just a web page being rendered. You click it and it talks to their API backend and it checks, okay, this space ID, return all the data about that space, and that space will have a bundle, a Unity asset bundle attributed to it, and that is basically the same sort of file, the .assets file that we had downloaded, or that we had found in the games folders. So I'm going to real quick show how you can get a level for a room that an event's in. So let's see here. We've got a bunch of good events here. There's one I haven't messed with much yet, and that is the campfire. So here's an event in the campfire. I'm going to go ahead and rip this level. So basically all you got to do is click on an event and you just type in API between the URL and the events. So just /API/events. Hit enter, and you will get a printout, a very kind of confusing printout of that whole level. I use a program called Notepad++, which has a plugin called JS Tools. So I'll show it to you here in just a sec. I gotta close out some of my other projects. There you go. So here's Notepad++. You don't have to use this. It just makes it a bit easier to read all this stuff, because this is sort of raw, minimized, I think JSON, which is like JavaScript stuff. I don't know. I'm still new to everything. But if you paste it, you'll see everything is on one line, and it's basically not usable. So we're going to go to Plugins, JS Tool, JS Format, and it'll go through and it'll actually like clean up all the stuff. So this is all just for one event. This is just telling their engine all the details that they need for this event. Bunch of interesting stuff. You know, where the default enclosures are, resources. So these are like native resources. I'm not going to go through it too much. But this is the section we're looking at here, bundles. These are where the actual Unity files are to download for the game. You can see down here they have platform, so like that's the Android version of the map for Unity 5.4. This is the Mac version, this is the PC version, Mac and PC again for the older versions of Unity, although I'm not sure why these would ever be downloaded, but I guess they have them there just for legacy support. So this is Unity version 5.4 for the PC. And so I'm just going to download that. So it's got a URL here. We're going to copy that. And like I said, you can get this just from the web browser. You don't have to go through and clean everything up here, but it just makes it easier to sort through. So I copied that. I'm just going to paste it, hit enter, and right away it will download. You don't have to spoof your user agent or anything like that. It just accepts it and downloads. In the future, you might have to spoof your user agent. We'll see. All right, geometric campfire. So that's kind of internally what they call that, apparently. And we're going to go under Wacky Travel, Unity Rips. And I'm just going to drop that right here. Now, this is not yet the exact same type of file as those .asset files that we can open with Unity Studio. So this actually now has to be converted to get this into that sort of format. For that, we're actually now finally going to use this assets bundle extractor. And this program will work on the assets files as well. It's a similar sort of program to Unity Studio to let you browse through, but it only lets you export stuff as .obj files, which can be useful because it's a simpler file format. You're kind of more guaranteed that it'll work, but the FBXs are nice because you get like everything that was in the file. You can get the rig and stuff like that. All right, so we're just going to say open. That'll kind of let you choose any file for this. I'm going to go back to my folder that I made, Unity Rips, and there you go. Unity Campfire, or sorry, Geometric Campfire. It says this bundle is compressed, and that's why it won't open with Unity Studio, because it's a compressed version that's got like 3 different files in it. So we're just going to hit yes, we want to unpack it, and I'm going to name this Geometric Campfire Unity 5 Uncompressed. It's a very long file extension, but you just name it whatever you want, basically. And there we go. Now it's uncompressed. Once you see stuff listed here, it's uncompressed. So this actually had 2 different asset packs in it. It's got geometric campfire.assets, and this one is basically a shared assets 0.assets file. So to actually use this, we're going to click on the first one and hit export. And here we can go. I guess I'll just throw it back at the root here. Let's make a folder for it. Campfire. And you can see it's wanting to save as a .assets file. And this one was just, okay, so this is shared assets. So I'm kind of going to call it the same, just geometric campfire underscore shared assets 0.assets. It doesn't matter how you name it, but this sort of just keeps it with the sort of file names that they had. It was shared assets 0, so whatever. We'll go with that. All right, that has now been exported, and then we're also going to do just this root one. Export. Now, what's a little weird is I don't see anything else exported in there, right? Okay, so you actually do want to type the file extension on there, assets There we go. So we're just going to take that same one now and just get rid of the shared assets thing at the end, because that's how this one was named. There we go. So we got the two different things here. We've got kind of like a root and a shared assets. I don't know. I honestly don't know how that works. But so we're just going to take a look in these. To do so, you can click on Info, and you can see we're getting a similar sort of list of all the assets that we did in Unity Studio. You've got like the tree models, things like that. These are all just meshes. And this sort of has them all separated. What's a little more interesting is if you go to the one that doesn't have shared assets and you go to Info to look at that, you'll have a combined mesh option. And this one has actually got 4 of them. That's interesting. Usually this will be everything that's in the level combined into one OBJ file, or combined into one thing that you can export as an OBJ. It might have like a poly limit per object or something, so maybe that's why it's breaking it up into similarly sized files. But anyway, this program has got a plugin called Export to OBJ, so you can choose objects here that you want to export as OBJs. I'm going to go ahead and do that just so you can see the difference between what you get from both of these programs. Yeah, it's under Campfire, so we'll just go ahead and do that one. Do this one, all 4 of them. I haven't ripped this level before, so we'll kind of see what we get. There we go. And then after this, I'll try and do it through Unity Studio, just so you guys can see the difference in what you get from each program. And what's cool is we can now go down. Game object is typically just like kind of a locator that shows, hey, this is where that thing was, but it doesn't necessarily include the mesh or anything about it. So these can give you locators to use as reference for stuff. You can even find like your lighting, lights and stuff in here. I'm not sure if that'll actually work. Unnamed asset, a lot of times those will be your lights. It all depends how cleanly they were working inside of Unity and how much stuff they named, what they named it. You can't be guaranteed anything's going to actually be understandable when you look at it through this sort of thing. But yeah, so for the combined meshes, that's usually where you want to look. For the more specific stuff, you want to look under the shared assets file, and that'll have a little bit more granular of outputs. It's like there's geotrees, UV'd, tree 5, maybe some useful stuff there. You can see each individual object tends to be kind of split out there. If you have a specific thing you're looking for, you might look under that. Anyway, so we got 4 OBJ files, and we exported our asset packages, which is what Unity Studio can use. So let's do load file in Unity Studio now and just see what we get from that. Unity rips. Oh, sorry, it's under Campfire. And yes, so I'm going to go under geometric. Is that what I typed? So let's rename that real quick. Geometric. Okay, geometric Campfire assets open. And again, it will give you a bunch of stuff. Environment. So what's neat here is I can just check environment and do export selected objects, or you can do just export all selected objects if it's literally like the root of your scene. So I'm going to do that. We're just going to call it campfire.fbx. And that will take a while because that is basically exporting the whole level, but actually it did not take that long. So next one I'm going to try is that shared assets folder, just see what's under there. Alright, so it looks like this really contains nothing. You'll see that a lot with these levels, is the shared assets just won't have much of anything in it. So probably in Unity Asset Bundle Extractor that was just showing references from this package back to the main package or something. I don't know. Alright, let's open up Maya, see what we got again. Now if this is anything like their exhibition space, the FBX is actually not going to be terribly usable. It'll have a ton of locators and clones of the same main mesh under it. I'm not sure why that is. But let's see if they've improved Unity Studio. It might be much better now. So I'm importing that Campfire FBX into this, into Maya. And it's taking a while because, like I said, it is a full level. Alright. Oh, interesting. Bind pose. He's complaining about bind pose. Now, this might actually have things like those red panda. What? Okay, that's kind of cool. Let's see what that's about. Anyway. Oh boy, we got some crazy mesh going on here. Let's just hit wireframe mode. Oh my god. So it looks like this is doing the same thing that it did to me last time, where basically the whole level is duplicated and placed around the whole level over and over again. You can see no matter how much I zoom out, there's like clones of it at different scales. Yeah, so I think basically every object that was in the scene became a clone of the whole scene space at different scales, if that makes sense. So we've just got a ton of crazy shit. Here we have Geo Campfire. So I'm going to try and frame everything in view here if I can. I'm just going to zoom out until I don't see green anymore. And I'm going to grab my camera and just set the far clip plane to be really, really, really far away. Maybe even further. And then I'm going to set this to like 100. There we go. Alright, so we have some sort of idea of what we're dealing with here. Yeah, so if I select any of these, you can see it's basically the whole level is placed there over and over and over again. So that's no good. So now we do have red panda. I don't know what that is. I'm going to look at that later. I don't want to like ruin any surprises that they might have planned in the game. But yeah, you can usually find some interesting stuff this way. Naturally, you're digging through stuff that you shouldn't be. So bucket, I don't know what that is. Anti-FBX trolling. Anti-trolling mole stopper. Oh, okay, that's hilarious. So this is basically stopping. This is what stops people from teleporting through the level and stuff. That's kind of hilarious. Fire striker. I don't know what that is. Okay, so that's the fireworks. Spawnings is like your just a bunch of spawn point locators. Leaf particles. These would be your particle spawners in the trees. I'm just going to delete that. Geo campfire, and you can see that's everything. Log seeding. Let's see if I can frame that. Okay, so that's also another copy of the mesh, so that's not terribly useful. Campfire flames is, whoa, some crazy shit. I might want to look at that at some point. What can be useful here is doing show, isolate, select, view selected. So this is, yeah, okay, so all of these are still just copies of the whole mesh, everything. So this is really not terribly useful, but what I am going to do real quick is I'm going to delete everything but that panda, and I'm going to look at that later, like I said. But for now, let's also see what we get from the OBJ file. I found if you want to get, like, if they're using speed trees, you can only get those from the FBX, but you're going to want to delete everything but those, and then get the rest of the mesh from the OBJ files. Alright, so let's just import this very first OBJ file. Let me let Maya finish loading here. Okay, so the very first OBJ file, it'll warn you that it had a bunch of face groups that are going to be split into selection sets in Maya. That's fine. Okay, so it looks like these actually are split into multiple OBJ files, so we'll have to import all of them. Yeah, so we have one poly surface for probably, I don't know, 65,000 polys or whatever the typical limit is in Unity. And then it segments out to the next OBJ. Yep. And then segments that out to the next OBJ. And then segments that out to the next OBJ. So this now should be everything in the level is imported. And it looks like it is. So we've got all that. We've got the mountains off at the distance there. Yes, this is the whole level. Now certain things will be missing, like all their tree cards out here. Those were probably placed in Unity. As maybe a particle system even. I'm not sure how they were placing those, but apparently it was not just your standard objects out there. I'm just going to select something over here so I can kind of focus on this area. But yeah, there's the campfire. And that came in a lot cleaner than what you would get from the FBX. The FBX technically had a lot more info in there, but it's kind of corrupted in that you got clones of the level for every single object, which is not good. I don't know if there's a way to fix that. It might just be something I'm doing wrong with Unity Studio, but there you go. And from here, this lines up exactly how it does in the engine. So if you make a full space app and you want models to show up around the level, you would use this as a reference to place them. And yeah, So, like I said, don't use this to share assets from the game. You do not own this artwork just because you have it. Somebody else at a company put a lot of hours into this, and so it's kind of disrespectful to pass that stuff around. I'm sure I'm being a hypocrite because I have helped people with that in the past, but I'm going to try not to anymore, and just spread the knowledge to help people get just what they need. I think that's a better approach to that in the future. Yeah, there you go. If you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Slack or something. Yeah. So hopefully this has been useful to you guys. This will help you get your characters. If you want to make props to attach to the characters, it'll help you get the levels, so you can place stuff in specific places of the levels, or even have stuff sitting perfectly on the contour of the terrain and the level and things like that. So I know it's helped me out extensively in the past for making my app, so I don't think it's something that's a detriment to the game by any stretch of the imagination. Just be conscious and considerate in how you use these files, and definitely do not distribute them if you don't own them. Alright, I've said that enough. Thank you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. See ya.